All right, so here is our special rights video, uh, special right triangles, the 45, 45, 90. That's not supposed to be 45, 45, 45. The 45, 45, 90 and the 30, 60, 90 are two special right triangles because when you're presented with one of these, it is something that you can kind of do without a calculator because you can actually memorize the strategy for these things. And the reason why they're so important and they're special is because the 45, 45, 90 is exactly half of a perfect square. So, this all started back in the day when they were, before we had all this technology that we have, when they were carpenters making things, the 30, 60, 90 is a half of a rectangle. So they were able to do a lot of stuff without, all the technology at work sites because they didn't have the technology. But before we get into the actual triangles themselves, some of you might not have ever worked with radicals. So I have a couple radical problems over here in the left-hand margin I just want to go over with you before we get started to make life a lot easier once we start jumping into these triangles. So we have here what we say is 4 times radical 2, not square root 2. 4 times radical 2 would be a decimal. So every time in special right triangles, your answers in a multiple choice test will never be a decimal. So that's why I got to try to show you how to work with these radicals, and it's pretty easy. So 4 times radical 2, if you put that in your calculator, a lot of calculators are going to punch out a decimal. So I want you to treat the radical 2 like a term. So we could treat it like x. So this is a number, and this is a radical. I would like you to compare that to 4 times x. We don't do 4 times x. So I would say 4 times x here would be 4x. So 4 times radical 2, because 4 is a number and this is a radical, these are not like terms. I'm just going to say the answer would be 4 times x is x. 4 times radical 2 is 4 radical 2. Once again, 3 times radical 2, those aren't like terms. So I would say 3 times x would be 3x. And I can compare that to 3 times radical 2 would be 3 radical 2. So here we do have like terms. Radical 2 times radical 2, those are like terms. So I will multiply these, and they will become 2 times 2 is square root of 4. Now, here is where you have to remember some old school math that you were taught a while back is we can take the square root of 4. That is a perfect square, okay? What I mean by that is when you take the square root of a number and you get a whole number, it's a perfect square. So we are going to reduce when we can. So this is not the answer in its reduced form. So all of you have taken the square root of 4 at some point in middle school or high school, and the square root of 4 is 2, and that's a whole number 2. So that is the answer. When you get a perfect square, we reduce it. A perfect square would be 4, because the square root of 4 is 2. Another perfect square would be 9, because 9 is 3 times 3. Another one would be 16, because it's 4 times 4. And I don't have to go on any further, because I hope you get what I'm trying to show you. So here is 3 radical 2 times radical 2. So we have a whole number, a radical, and a radical. Well, there is no other whole number, so I will not multiply the 3 by anything. Here we do have like terms. It would be 3 radical 4. So 3 radical 4, actually the 4 becomes 2. So we have to reduce this when we do see radicals that we can reduce. This is 3 times radical 4. 3 times the square root of 4. The square root of 4 is 2, so it turns into 3 times 2. And your final answer here would be 6. Okay, we are going to divide a little bit. 11 radical 2 divided by radical 2. When you get to this situation, if you have like terms on opposite sides of the fraction bar or division bar, you can cancel. So now the answer here is just 11. All right, so this is going to be a long video. There's lots of new stuff in this video. I'm going to try my best to keep rolling. Remember, you can pause and rewind. So let's take a look at the first special right triangle, the 45, 45, 90. Is the right angle is always made up of two legs. Two sides of the right triangle are called legs, and the hypo is that longest side across from the right angle. This is an isosceles triangle because two angles are equal. Therefore, the legs must be equal. If it has two angles equal, it has two legs equal. And here is our first formula. Leg equals, well, leg equals leg. They are equal. So how do you, the other formula for the leg would be hypo divided by radical 2. I know this might be new to all of you, but by the end of this video, I'm pretty sure you'll catch on. The hypo is always your leg, or one of your legs, because the legs are the same, times radical 2. All right, so let's apply these formulas to 1, 2, and 3. Number 1, this is a leg. So identify what you have. You have a leg. In the 45, 45, 90, once you have one leg, you have both legs. You are already halfway done. It's isosceles, the two legs are equal. This is the hypo. It's across from the 90. Up here it says leg times radical 2. So we will say 8 times radical 2. 8 times radical 2 are not like terms. So 8 times radical 2 is 8 radical 2. Done. Another one. Number 2, 45, 45, 90. This is the leg. Y is the other leg. They're equal. I'm already halfway finished. The directions up at the top of the screen say the hypo is leg times radical 2. The hypo is across from the 90. That is 25 times radical 2, and they are not like terms. So number 3, I made a mistake. I want you to go ahead and cancel this out to make it 16. The typo there. All right, so this is a toughie. So if I was you, I would try to like circle this or star it. We start with the hypo, and we start with the hypo as a whole number. So how do we get the leg is we take hypo divided by radical 2. I have to use this one right here because I don't have another leg to say leg equals leg. So to get the leg, I'm going to go to this formula. I'm going to say 16 divided by radical 2. So let me give you a little shortcut, okay? So when you have this situation, when the hypo is a whole number, and I'm going to use this as whole number, in the 45, 45, 90, you're going to divide this by 2 and put a radical 2 behind it. So you're going to divide by 2, put a radical 2 behind it. That's the formula. So let me put that 16 in here. So let's put our 16 at top of this. That's where you put your hypo. Divided by 2 times radical 2. So 16 divided by 2 is 8. I can do that, but 8 times radical 2, I cannot do that. So both of these legs are 8 radical 2 because once you find one, you found the other because they're equal. Once again, this formula is going to be used. It's a shortcut when the hypo is a whole number. Divided by 2, give it a radical 2, and you will have both legs. So you can put 8 radical 2 for both of these. All right, moving on. What if the hypo is presented and it has a radical 2 on it? The formula above says take your hypo, divide it by radical 2. Let's put 2 radical 2 in this. Now, I talked about before, when you have something on the same exact thing on opposite sides of the fraction bar, they cancel out. That's your leg. Whatever's left over is your leg. Well, there you go. Everybody should see now, or is assuming to go ahead and put this 2 here. And you're right. Once you have one leg, you have the other. So leg is hypo divided by radical 2. So here it is again. The hypo is 8 radical 2. I'm going to take the 8 radical 2 divided by radical 2, and you can see, once again, these cancel out. You have one leg, and you are right to go ahead and copy it over there. You have both legs are 8. Number 6, you have a leg here. That's the hypo because it's across from the 90. Well, I'm copying that leg. The 45, 45, 90 is pretty easy with that. And the hypo is leg times radical 2. So I don't know if you noticed this, but hopefully you're noticing that I'm not even worried about grabbing calculators. This was why they used this information back in the day without the technology, because they didn't need to use a calculator. So I am going through these pretty quickly now that I have these formulas memorized. And the numbers are kind of small enough to where I don't really need to worry about using a calculator. All right, so here's the first time you see a leg with the radical 2. So this is a leg, this is the hypo. I know I can copy the leg over here. The top formula says to get the hypo, I will take leg times radical 2. Notice you have to put another radical 2 there. It doesn't matter if the leg already has a radical 2 on it. I multiplied by radical 2. So we've seen this problem at the beginning of the video, 3 times radical 2 and radical 2. I can combine like terms. This is no longer a radical. You have to reduce this. This is 2. This is 3 times 2 is 6. The hypo in its reduced form is 6. This is the only answer that's going to be correct. This is not going to be correct on a test or anything that I give you. Number 8, 15 radical 3. We're going to skip that. I'm not going to give you anything crazy like that. Okay, so I'm going to cancel that out. Let's give you 8. Okay, that's the hypo. That's the leg. We want to circle this or start again and say this is one of our weird ones where you're going to use that formula. We use the formula when the hypo is a whole number. And that formula was up here on number 3. So since the hypo is a whole number, we divide it by 2 and give it a radical 2. So 8 divided by 2 times radical 2 would be 4 radical 2. And both legs are 4 radical 2. Number 9, that is not a hypo, that's a leg. This leg is equal to it. So how do I get the hypo? Is I multiply your leg times radical 2. All right, so this is a whole number. These are like terms, so I can combine those. So 2 times the square root of 4. We can do that math. The square root of 4 is 2. 2 times that is, our final answer is 4. Once again, our little shortcuts, when we get to these points, both of these are using our shortcut, a divide by 2, give it a radical 2. When the hypo is a whole number, I accidentally did the exact same number up here without even looking at it. So 8 divided by 2 is 4, and give it a radical 2. So this would be 4 radical 2. When the hypo is a whole number. This is the same. Hypo is a whole number. Divided by 2, 6 divided by 2 is 3. Give it a radical 2. 3 radical 2. Same with this. Both legs are equal. And there is our 45, 45, 90 right triangle.